Encounters with the Being of Light, After Effects. So you may be wondering, after listening to some of this, what happens if a person shows up in front of the Being of Light and they don't believe in him? They don't have a belief in God. They didn't even know that there was an afterlife. They never thought to find out if they could get saved or what. And then they actually show up and they're talking to him now. What happens? Do they have a different experience? And the good news is their experiences are great. God reveals himself to them and loves them, and they do not experience any condemnation or anger or displeasure from God. It's very much like meeting a friend, and this friend is doing his best at showing himself to you and inviting you into a relationship with him. Atheists oftentimes have great encounters with the Being of Light and instantly fall in love with him. I would actually say of 10 atheists who met God and came back to tell us about it, all 10 of them said, "Great, I loved it. I'm so looking forward to seeing him again. He's my best friend now, and he loved me more than I've ever been loved by anyone, and it answered longings in my soul that I didn't even know I had." And so just know that people that aren't that maybe didn't even wonder how to get saved and never became believers, that their experience of the Being of Light is really as good or better than other people's experiences of the light. This being loves unconditionally, and he isn't caring what people believe about him or what religion they're a part of. He just loves, and he's inviting you into a relationship with him. And really what matters is just how honest you are and whether or not you're open to that and whether or not you want that. Sometimes people from religions really are disinterested in God. I'll get into more of that in a second. God is God, and this Being of Light is God, and nobody questions that. Nobody up there, nobody down here, nobody that meets him. I mean, the power coming off this being is just unquestionable. You know that you're talking to, everything is connected to this being. So arguments are not possible. You don't really see people arguing with him. He simply just pervades all of the afterlife, and everybody knows it. He's not concerned what you call him or what means what you used to how you communicated with him on the earth. We have to really get over our silly notion of that we've got the corner on God and that he can't belong to these other religions, or that he is something other than what we say he is. He transcends all that. I mean, he's God, and that's who he is, and he just invites you to come up and talk to him. It's kind of like meeting your best friend at Starbucks. You're just going to sit down and have a conversation. It's kind of like, hey, what's up? How's your life been? It's very friendly. It's very inviting. People, like I said, people fully just discover this incredible love for him. Okay, so those people who are worried about their atheist friends, when they meet this Being of Light, they may switch in a heartbeat and totally fall in love with him. And then when they return to Earth, they're totally changed by the experience. Many come back here and they explain that God is never questioning them regarding their beliefs, whether they're Hindu or Muslim or atheists or what background they had. He simply never even brings up the concept of religion or that it even determines how they relate to him or how he relates to them at all. God transcends all that. He doesn't treat you any different based on what religion you subscribe to. He really is only caring about what are the desires of your heart, what do you show up with, who are you, what are you made of, and he'll take you right there wherever you're at. And people can discover what they're made of in the process of meeting the Being of Light. So now let's talk about what is this Being of Light up to. He really does seem to be up to healing. There's this interesting aspect where when you study a person that's had an encounter with this Being of Light and they come back down to earth and they have to live their life out here, they are oftentimes thinking and going over that near-death experience over and over again, trying to understand it because it is so dense. It is so packed full of deep, personal communication from this being of light or other guides that they met up there that was directly applying to their life. Personally, they knew the being of light knows exactly who you are and knows exactly what you need and shows you exactly what you need to know. And that's what's really cool about this, is it's highly personal. It's exactly what you needed in that moment, in that step of your life. And so much so that it's profoundly impacting, and people are changed forever based on these experiences. It's very, these interactions that you have with the being of light, people oftentimes say, it was exactly what I needed. And it had a maximum impact on their life. And it takes them years and years and years, upwards of 10, sometimes some people estimate 14 years to actually unpack all that was in that one encounter. So they're really rich experiences. There is a law of progression, that souls are progressing, in that in the afterlife, and God seems to be very interested in drawing you closer to him, to be more connected to him, to be more like him, to become partakers of his divine nature. He is generous. He wants to share himself with you, and he wants you to become more like him. This seems to be true in all aspects of the NDE. There's growth producing experiences, and they have a direction to them. And this light, this being of light, is continually attracting you to him. And what's interesting is the experiences down here are very valuable. They're actually more valuable than the experiences up there. There's something about what we experience down here that prepares our hearts, that makes us hungry for getting loved, for understanding what love is, for appreciating the being of light, for knowing what to do with him. So it's like the hardships down here really fine-tune our senses to being able to receive and to have room in our hearts for all that there is up there. So just know that what goes on down here in this earth plane is very important, and the changes and growth that we go through down here is built upon up there. It's like you can't get the higher levels until you get the more basic instructions down here. Everything that God does is uniquely suited to further your chances of becoming closer to him, becoming closer to his divinity, to share in his nature. He longs for you to join him, and he longs to show you who he is and to make you like himself. That's very clear. Now let's talk about free-willed beings. We are free-willed beings, both here and up there. And you hear me talk about how great it is to meet this being of light, but there really is any number of responses that you can have to him. A lot of times people have a vast array of responses. You cannot say everybody responds the same. As unique as we are as human beings, is how different our responses are to the being of light. He shares himself with us, just as I've described. But what people do with that is very different. You cannot get dogmatic. You can't come up with rules about the afterlife. You can't say, if this happens, then this happens. You can pretty much just describe things in bell curves. It's like, well, the average is right around here, but there's some outliers. There's some people over here, and there's some people over here, and they do really crazy things. And it's all, I mean, it's a whole infinite number of possibilities up there. You cannot just say, well, this is the way it's always going to be. It's like, there's a lot going on, and it's a great deal of variety because it's dependent on what people desire, and people desire so many different things. Okay, so you can't get deterministic about this. That's what I'm saying is God, I think, really enjoys the fact that we're free-willed beings, and he doesn't know exactly what we're going to do, believe it or not. I don't think determinism is possible given the infinite complexity of people. It really is a relationship, and the relationship can go in many different directions at any point in time. Now, there's some people that, are pretty clearly always going to choose the same thing, and the more broken and deprived and desperate a person is, they oftentimes always choose the same things, and so they're not unpredictable. They're very predictable, but those are people that choose evil or hellish experiences. They're always going to choose that, and so what they're going to choose. But people that live in the freedom of just being open to new experiences, they oftentimes get God, and they get to go enjoy heaven at higher levels. But people that are kind of in between, that haven't really made up their mind, it could go either way. It's not certain. So you cannot hear me say that just meeting this being of light is going to be a slam dunk that you're in and that you're saved, or healed, or fixed, or made divine. A lot of people don't respond very well, actually, to the being of light. More so than you would think. I'll tell you how they respond in a moment. So just know that just because God is revealing and showing you these immensely pleasurable experiences, people are not immediately going to just, be his instantly. There's a lot of stuff that has to be worked through, and for many people. So we can't get deterministic about this. I think God is actually kind of hoping always that good will happen, but he's open to surprises, and we oftentimes do surprise him. So you can't say that it's a given that if this and this and this happen, that this person's going to change or be changed by the whole experience. What's interesting is God is really after experiences, not book learning or memorizing things or just putting the right answer on the test. He's more into giving you an experience and seeing what you do with it, and how does that change you, and what does it shift, and how do you sift it inside. Okay, now how do people respond to the light is really quite different. You never know exactly what you're going to get. Some people are really hungry and dive right in, and they say, make room for me, I'm coming in, and they literally just dive right into the being of light. Other people see him, and afterwards they still may not actually want him. They may want to choose lesser things, and that's okay. They got to meet him and enjoy him for a moment, but that did not obligate them to stay and to keep that storyline going. There are a lot of people that have been poisoned by various types of religion, and not in the way you would think, not that they were turned away from God because of religion, but because of their religious beliefs, they get caught up in not being able to really see him or understand him, or even believe in him. They actually prefer to be in darker parts of the afterlife. So just know that when you meet the being of light, he will always be highly friendly and relational and caring and want to share intimate moments with you. But what you do with that is really up to you, and it may not be always a good outcome. A lot of times people completely miss the blessing that the being of light wants to give them, and they instead get preoccupied with some lesser pursuit, or they get their heads filled up with fanciful notions of stories and rabbit trails that really are not relational. So it's kind of like there are those that get love, and there are those that don't get love, and those that fall in love with the being of love and light, and those people who really don't want love, and they're kind of turned off by the whole thing. It's almost as though they can't even hold it. They don't know what to do with it, or it's too overwhelming. In the past, before I started studying these NDEs, I used to fear that there was this big guy in the sky, and that he was so much higher and greater and other than us, that we would never have any chance of knowing him. But really, you can know him. I mean, he is just a friend, and people describe him as being that friend that they've always wanted. But what's interesting is there are those that don't want that kind of relationship with him. They respond totally different. Instead, they sort of stay at a distance. Some people kind of like fold their arms, and they're kind of like not interested in the whole thing. Some people are completely clueless as to what they're looking at. They know it's God, but they really don't get that into him. Instead, they just shift their attention to something else. But some are ready to receive. And that's the best gift that you can give him, is that you've opened up your heart and ready to receive his love for you. So what I would recommend is grow in your capacity to receive love. Grow in your capacity to participate in intense shared feelings of joy and intimacy, because that's what God wants to share with you. if you have cultivated that capacity to give and to receive love down here, then when you are standing before him, the good gifts that he wants to share with you, you'll be able to receive, you'll be able to understand them. So prepare your hearts to meet him. Have your questions ready. Bring your needs. Have requests to be healed. If you have trouble forgiving, then ask him to help you with forgiveness. If you are afraid, then ask him to show you that there's nothing to be afraid of. If you have anger or wounds or hurts, ask him to heal you and to restore what was broken. He wants to be asked. There's nothing to fear. Just go for it. You'll come away healed from the inside out. Now, let's go to the final question, and that is to return or not to return. A lot of times when people show up in front of the being of light, he's asked them the question of, well, do you want to stay or do you want to go back? And a lot of them, after having been enraptured by this love, want to stay. They're like, no, you have to keep me here. I'm not going to go anywhere. And then he reminds them, he says, but have you considered this person needs you? And he shows you a picture of your best friend, or he shows you a picture of your wife or of your family. And he asks you the question, are you really ready to leave them? They still need you. What would they feel if they lost you and they found that you succeeded in killing yourself today in this suicide attempt? Don't you want to go back? So he oftentimes encourages you to stay on the earth if you're not done down there. And he will remind you of why you know you're not done. And oftentimes people say, oh, you're right, I forgot. I need to be there for my kids, or I need to be there for my husband. And so then they say, okay, you're right. As beautiful as you are and as much as I love being here, I need to finish the reason why I was on the earth. So they agree and they go right back. There are other people who insist that they want to stay. No, I don't want to go back. I'm done with the earth. And they really don't get the choice. This is one instance in which they're not totally free. And he says to them, you have to go back. Maybe it's because somebody has got the electrical paddles on their chest and is starting to shock them, and their heart is starting again, and they're getting sucked back into their body. So there are some people that don't get the choice to stay. They actually are forced to go back. What's interesting is when they do return, they are oftentimes completely devastated. The experience of the being of light was so overwhelming, so pleasurable, that they are immediately in the throes of depression and suicidal thoughts and just not wanting to be on the earth, knowing that they have to face their life down here again and deal with all the hardships. They're not even concerned about their body, even though it might be in a lot of pain. For the majority of their emotions, they just long to be with the being of light, and they wish to be back there with him, and they wonder why they had to leave and how they're going to make it down here without that intense feeling of joy. And some of them do get suicidal, and they start trying to find other ways to get back to him. And he really discourages that. There are a few people that did try and kill themselves a second time, or drink themselves into unconsciousness, or have an overdose, and he sends them back. He just says, no, look, you haven't finished your job down there. You have not completed your mission. Go back and don't come here till it is your time. So you really don't get to force his hand in that. He just sends them back, and some people have just given up after a couple attempts, and they're like, well, he's not going to accept me. I have to stay here and complete my course. What's interesting is that these after effects of people when they come back are so profound that that's one of the greatest proofs that a near-death experience is real, and that this whole phenomenon we're describing is actually true. Is these people's lives are totally changed. They give up their old friends. Some of them give up their old spouses. Some of them change their entire life. They give up money, their pursuits of fame, or some skill or expertise, and they instead get involved in helping others in hospice work, or in being around people that need help. They totally redo their lives. They lose their interest in material things. They lose their interest in the material world. They lose their interest in monetary gain, and instead they want to basically spend the rest of their time on the earth, making their lives count, making a difference, being good to other people, and having what we would call a heavenly mindset of caring for others and not wanting to just make it all about them, or living in a selfish way. So just know that meeting the being of light is a wonderful experience. You're going to be so happy when you do get to meet him. As far as what we're going to cover next, we're going to talk about God not being angry and how salvation is not a deliverance from an angry God. And then we're also going to talk about, after that, what about non-believers? Is God, how do you make sense of the fact that God is not defined in one particular way by one particular religion? How do you make sense of that in the next life? Okay, so stay tuned. Those are our upcoming topics. Bye.